On this F150 with the 2.7 EcoBoost, P0522 is a low engine oil pressure sensor circuit code. In plain terms, the PCM is seeing the oil pressure sensor input pulled low, and this diagnostic path treats that as a possible short-to-ground condition on the hardwired sensor input. The driver may see a low engine oil pressure warning, and the issue can involve the sensor circuit, terminals or connectors, the sensor itself, or the modules that pass the warning information to the cluster. Also keep in mind how the cluster behaves. If the engine RPM data or oil pressure warning request message is missing for less than 5 seconds, the cluster holds the last warning state. If it is missing for 5 seconds or longer, it turns the low oil pressure warning on. That is why the first checks separate a real sensor circuit fault from a display or network message problem. Start with the engine warm or hot. Key on. Use the scan tool to get into the PCM data and watch the EOPURPID. If the sensor circuit fault is present right now, move straight into circuit testing at the oil pressure sensor. If it is not present, run the PCM self-test and check stored codes. If the oil pressure sensor family or related communication code is stored, continue into the same circuit test path. If different codes are present, check what they mean first, instead of forcing this oil pressure path. If the PCM self-test does not give you a code path, check the message center operation next. Key on, close the doors, hood, and tailgate, clear the message center warnings, and watch the door ajar warning indicator. Open the driver door, clear the pop-up, and make sure the indicator is off with the door closed and on with the door open. If it does not respond correctly, stop and diagnose the warning indicator path before going after the oil pressure circuit. If it passes, start the engine and confirm the tachometer works. No tach operation points you toward the tachometer diagnostic path. If the tachometer is working, run the instrument cluster self-test. Any cluster codes need to be handled before continuing. If the cluster is clean, check the gateway continuous memory codes. If gateway or network communication codes are stored, handle that communication problem first. If there are no gateway codes, continue to the oil pressure sensor circuit tests. Now test at the engine oil pressure sensor. For the 2.7L engine, turn the ignition off and disconnect engine oil pressure sensor connector C1642. Turn the ignition on and measure between C1642 pin 3 and C1642 pin 2. You should see approximately 5 volts. If you do, the feed and return are good enough to move into the signal circuit checks. If you do not see approximately 5 volts, skip ahead to the VREF and return circuit checks. With approximately 5 volts present at the sensor feed and return check, inspect the signal circuit electrically. Key off. Disconnect PCM connector C1232E for the 2.7L engine. Key on. Measure voltage from C1642 pin 1 to ground. Any voltage present means the signal circuit is shorted to voltage, so repair the circuit. If no voltage is present, turn the ignition off and check resistance between C1642 pin 1 and PCM connector C1232E pin 29. The signal circuit should be less than 3 ohms. If it is not less than 3 ohms, repair the open or high resistance circuit. If it is less than 3 ohms, check the signal circuit for a short to ground by measuring from C1642 pin 1 to ground. Resistance should be greater than 10,000 ohms. If it is not greater than 10,000 ohms, repair the circuit. If the signal circuit passes all of those checks, install a new engine oil pressure sensor, clear the codes, and test the system for normal operation. If the oil pressure warning is still always on after that, pause, recheck the earlier diagnostic path, and avoid guessing. If the sensor connector did not show approximately 5 volts between feed and return, move to the VREF circuit. Key off. Disconnect PCM connector C1232E. Key on. Measure voltage from C1642 pin 3 to ground. Any voltage present means the VREF circuit is shorted to voltage, so repair the circuit. If no voltage is present, turn the ignition off and measure resistance between C1642 pin 3 and PCM connector C1232E pin 117. It should be less than 3 ohms. If it is not, repair the VREF open or high resistance circuit. If it passes, measure resistance from C1642 pin 3 to ground. That should be greater than 10,000 ohms. If it is not, repair the VREF short to ground. If VREF passes, check the return circuit by measuring resistance between C1642 pin 2 and PCM connector C1232E pin 112. It should be less than 3 ohms. If it is not, repair the return circuit. If the return circuit passes, install a new engine oil pressure sensor, clear the codes, and test the system for normal operation. If the low engine oil pressure warning is still always on, pause and recheck the diagnostic path rather than jumping to an unsupported repair. Keep verification separate from the circuit testing. After any circuit repair or sensor replacement that is supported by the test results, clear the DTCs and test the system for normal operation. The key on P0522 is not to assume the sensor first. Confirm the warning display and communication side when the scan data does not point directly to the sensor circuit. Then prove the 5-volt feed, signal, VREF, and return paths in order. For more diagnostic training, visit stepdiagnostics.com.